I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. And this is the I Hate Politics candidate interview with Marilyn Balcombe from Montgomery County Council District 2. I'm Sunil Dasgupta, host of I Hate Politics. Marilyn Balcombe is a longtime president of the Gaithersburg-Germantown Chamber of Commerce. She ran for the county council at large in 2018 and lost at that time. This time she is running for District 2, which is roughly congruent to Councilmember Craig Wright's old up-county district, but because of the recent redistricting now extends more to the west to Poolesville. Craig Rice is term limited, and so this seat is considered open. Music for this episode comes from Kara Levchenko, an Arlington-based singer-songwriter who is the choir director at Centreville High School in Fairfax, Virginia.
Forgot about the way it felt when we'd say hello. How are you? 'Cause these days we ain't doing so well. This is my quarantine song. Everything feels wrong, but I know it will be okay. Just maybe not today. There's so much I miss, it's hard to pick.
Marilyn Balcombe, welcome to I Hate Politics.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. I love the title of your show.
Okay, you identified jobs, transportation, and housing as the key problems in Montgomery County. Can you describe your view of how you see the problems?
I talk about a three-legged stool with jobs, transportation, and housing. They're all three of those are very complex issues. They're all enmeshed. You can't solve one without the other. Montgomery County is losing ground. We are growing, our jobs are growing at a smaller rate, at a much lower rate than the region. So we think about Virginia, and we always talk about Virginia being our major competitor, which it is, Virginia and of course the district. But we need to look closer to home. I mean, Prince George's is growing at a faster rate than we are in terms of jobs.
But Prince George's is growing from a much lower base, so obviously their growth rate is going to be higher.
Well, that's true. That's true. But we have a tendency to rest on our laurels, and I think for so long, Montgomery County, we have a strong economy. Of course, we have to recover from this pandemic, but we've rested on our laurels. We have a company town mentality. We have relied on federal jobs for so long and high-paying federal jobs that we haven't paid attention to the private sector. And as we continue to grow, we are now officially over 1 million people. We need to do a better job of recruiting private sector industry to Montgomery County.
What are the reasons you think that Montgomery County is not growing its private sector jobs?
One issue is that we're new to the game of going out and recruiting jobs outside of our area. So it's just been in the past, 5 or 6 years, time flies, that we actually have a national, international marketing plan. And that's with the creation of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. With the first iteration of that organization was a heavy marketing push to get out there, to go to national conferences, to have relationships nationally, to sell Montgomery County. That's new. Historically speaking, that's new. And I think that that's a great trend, and I would assume that that's going to continue. So I think that continuing to fund the marketing of Montgomery County. That sounds obvious, When you look at the business sector, of course you need marketing, of course you need to sell. But because we had the luxury of the federal government being so close, we didn't really have to do that 20, 30 years ago.
Virginia had this, Northern Virginia has exactly the same thing. They have the Defense Department. We have the National Institutes of Health. Yeah. They could have rested on their laurels, but it seems like they did not, in your view.
They did not. They went out to market their industries. Which brings us to another issue. So I think overarching this marketing issue, which I think we are trying to resolve, is the issue of incentives. And companies in this day and age, providing incentives for businesses to relocate to a jurisdiction is happening. And we need to provide incentives for companies to move here. That's one of the major differences between Virginia and Maryland, and particularly in Montgomery County. And there's an ongoing debate. So I call them incentives. Some people call it corporate welfare, right? That is a global issue that we have in Montgomery County that pits the residents against business. Somehow we've created this construct that business is bad, right? Businesses provide food on our tables, roofs over our heads, from a perspective of providing jobs, our paychecks, and our tax base. And so we just simply have to get over this issue that business is bad. So one might say, okay, why would we give Amazon money? And the reason that we would have given Amazon money is because in return, we are going to get a significant number of high-paying jobs that in the end, the investment, the incentive will serve us better in the long run.
So the question is, though, has that kind of incentives ever worked? This is also the argument made by sports teams, right? That you build us a stadium and we will bring you jobs. And we find that in most cases, stadiums don't pay off.
I don't know that industry, so I can't speak to that. But from a perspective of providing incentives to businesses, the jobs do come and they stay. And similarly, providing incentives for businesses to stay.
Where has it worked?
If we look at Marriott, there were incentives for Marriott to stay in Montgomery County.
So we did give a Marriott incentives, right? And they stayed. And now, if we don't continue those incentives, they will move. So do incentives ever sunset, or is this like a permanent handout?
I think most incentives do sunset.
If Marriott is now saying, give us more incentives, I'm not sure they are, but if they are saying, give us more incentives so that we don't move, then it's hard to imagine a sunset in that case, right?
Well, the issue there is investment into the community, right? If most incentives that I'm aware of provide incentives to locate, right? So whether it's help in construction or help in impact tax or things like that, the investment, Marriott's making a significant investment in staying here, right? It's not as if 2 years from now they're going to turn around and say, give us more money, because they've invested in our community. So it's not annual. And you would have to look at the tax base, the jobs base, and what we're getting from Marriott. It's also not just an individual business, it's an industry, right? So, for instance, if we don't provide incentives for businesses to stay, then if we lose one, the issue is no big deal. But then having Marriott in Montgomery County is a marketing tool. Having Novavax, having AstraZeneca in Montgomery County is a major marketing incentive for other companies to relocate. And it's not just having the reputation that we provide for our large employers. it's the talent pool. So that's why when we look particularly in bioscience, having a highly educated talent pool, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Being a leader in hospitality creates a talent pool.
If talent pool is what is at stake, then why are we not taking that money and investing it in education? One of the reasons that Amazon is supposed to have located in Northern Virginia is because of Virginia Tech. I'm sure the usual answer is we can do all of it. We should do all of it. But, there's a choice to be made, right? If you're going to give companies incentives, then that's the money that is not going to now education.
I don't believe that premise that we can't do both. We have to have the jobs and we have to have the workforce. We need both, right? And so if we can convince companies to come into Montgomery County, which provides for the jobs, then we also have to work on workforce development. And workforce development is a huge issue, particularly now with the pandemic. We've seen a significant impact with the worker shortage, right? So yes, we need to invest in education from the perspective of skills-based workforce development that identifies what those skills are needed in jobs and create from, I don't want to say K through 12, but, high school, community college, certification programs, all that has to happen.
I do want to get to a certain the analysis that you provided, which is that, incentives are going to bring jobs. Do you think incentives are the only things that are holding back jobs from coming here? Or is there something in the regulatory system that we need to fix in order for jobs to come here?
Yes. No, incentives aren't the only issue. And yes, there are issues that we need to address. The taxes in Montgomery County, now there's debate. County executive stated that Montgomery County taxes are less than Virginia, but other studies say they're not. So there's a difference.
What do you believe?
I believe that taxes are higher in Montgomery County.
And do you include personal property taxes in Virginia in calculating Virginia taxes, or?
No, I'm looking at corporate taxes for businesses, right? So
but corporate taxes include personal property tax in Virginia.
Yes, they do. But a lot of businesses, I don't include that, right?
But when businesses are looking at their tax burden, right? They are looking at the totality of their tax burden. They're not going, oh, this is a sales tax heavy state, but, income tax low state and property tax, is here, right? So, but when they are calculating tax burden, they're calculating the totality of tax burden, right?
I think there was a study, I don't have it in, a recent study on jobs, and the tax issue was one of those issues. And so we've heard that. We continue to hear that from businesses.
So you would like to lower Montgomery County taxes?
I think that if we go back to the issue of incentives, I think you can incentivize through the impact tax. If you're from a development perspective, that's a way to do it, where you're incentivizing through the tax code. I think that's typically how it works.
So you believe that we should reduce impact taxes on certain developments that are beneficial to the county, and that is a way of saying, oh, we are lowering the tax.
Yes. And I think that we can do that in a way that, particularly for me in the up county, we need more jobs up here. And I think that is a way to do it from a perspective of getting jobs in industries that we are nurturing and in areas that we're nurturing. Yes. Okay.
Any other regulatory mechanism you would like to fix?
Yeah. So the development process, of course, we've been talking about this for 20 years. We've seen a significant improvement, but we're starting in the basement here, and maybe we're at ground level and we need to do better.
What specific improvements are you looking for?
One of the issues is the inspection process. So that's probably the issue that I hear the most. Somebody's building, a property, and in this commercial, I'm sure it happens in residential. I'm just unaware of it. Inspector comes through and says, you need to change A, B, and C. So they change A, B, and C. 3 months later, another inspector comes along and says, oh, well, what about D and E?
So how do you solve the problem?
Inspectors need to be held accountable. If an inspector makes a mistake, the county needs to be held accountable for that.
Do you think the problem is with inspector training or their standards? How are they making these mistakes repeatedly?
I think part of it is the culture, right? That somehow the inspector their job is to find mistakes, right? As opposed to helping this development be built in a manner that is safe and according to regulation.
And you believe that this is different in Virginia, in Northern Virginia, than here?
Anecdotally, yes. The primary issue for a developer or business, they need certainty. How much is a project going to cost and how long is it going to take? And in Virginia, the development process is much smoother.
Why?
Because they have the issue of troubleshooting, cutting through the red tape. Their focus is on getting this project built. And so...
But I'm still not understanding, why is it that Virginia can do those and we can't?
I don't know.
By the way, I've heard this from many, many, many people, and I haven't found an answer.
Montgomery County hasn't found the answer yet, right? Because it's still happening. Not anywhere near the rate that it was 5 years ago. So I do have to give props to the processes that are currently in place to not make that happen, but it still happens. And so whether it's training, selection, training, supervision, culture, somehow the problem still occurs. So that has to change. And then we have to deal with perception.
How is Alexandria or Arlington any different in that respect? I mean, really?
Again, what we hear from people who do this every day is that it's much easier to get a project through in Virginia and in other parts of Maryland.
Correct. I hear this absolutely all the time. Except I have not seen any evidence, and I have not seen a good answer for why. I
have seen evidence, Sunil. I have worked with businesses large and small that, a shake shop, just trying to open their doors, and they get it's like Dante's Inferno, right? They just get to the point where they keep going round and round and round in circles. And
it's the purgatory you're thinking about.
Yes, right. Well, I don't know. I think by the end, it is the inferno.
I'm not arguing about not fixing it. I'm just saying, I don't know if Arlington or Alexandria or other Northern Virginia jurisdictions are really different in that, in the inspection culture, if you will. And they're not very different in the regulatory, systems, because, codes are codes nationally and internationally now, right? So those are similar. But it's very hard to figure out what it is that, is making this difference. And then the solution often is provide an incentive to overcome it rather than change the root cause.
So also this issue of the culture of yes, right? So, I mean, even in this conversation that you and I are having, right? There's the dynamic that why are we giving money to businesses? Why are we going out of our way to help these businesses, right? So,
Not really. I'm asking about, the best use of money. I'm not saying that it should not go to businesses. I'm interested in what their alternative uses of of the same money are. So
right,
that's
okay.
it's not.
But what that underlying thread is that that business may not be the highest and best use, right? Now, I'm not saying it is either.
But it can be sometimes, and it's not other times. We don't know when it is and when it is not. I think there's variability there. That's the issue.
There is variability, and there is currently variability in the system, right? So it's not that it's certainly not all businesses are getting incentives, and some may be getting them that don't need them. Many may be getting them that do need them. But the issue is, in other jurisdictions, we wouldn't even be having this conversation because the underlying factor is we want business. Business is good. We want to do what we can to make sure that businesses succeed, and we want to make sure that we say yes. If you want to build a restaurant, how can I help you? How can I help you do that?
I don't disagree with you. I just, the thing that I disagree is that you are saying that there should be a presumption without having a conversation that businesses, that incentives are the best way to help businesses. I think a possible better way is to fix the regulatory structure rather than provide incentives. So instead of talking about what the regulatory failures are and how we can fix government that way, we say, oh, we can't fix government, so we will just give money.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that the first thing that we need to do is change the regulatory process to provide certainty in the system, right?
But how will you achieve that is the question. I mean, that's not a question that is new or novel. We've had this problem for a long time, as you mentioned. So how do we go now? What can be done now to fix that problem?
It's a matter of accountability in the structure to say that just simply won't be tolerated.
Do we not have accountability now?
I don't think we do.
Where is the failure?
I mean, I don't want to throw anybody out on the bus because they've been doing a fabulous job. There have been significant improvement, right? However, I do think from the departmental level, we need to continue to increase standards.
So the problem is at the departmental level. It's not at the political policy level.
No, I don't think so. I think you're right. I think it's at the departmental level.
Okay. Because this thing that you described about the inspectors saying no all the time is how Montgomery County is itself described at the political level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where the issue of this culture of yes. I didn't make it up. We've been talking about it for years. That when somebody needs something in the county, whether it's a business, a resident, a nonprofit, an agency, let the answer be yes. How can we fix that?
But we do that. If people were getting the sense that no, you can't, we say no to everything that residents or businesses want, then nobody would want to come here. But they do want to come here.
Yeah, I guess the issue is we're not saying no to everything, but we're saying the issue is have you ever called 311?
Oh yeah. I've been served and not. I've been served sometimes and not sometimes.
Yeah. I never tell anyone to call 311 because more times than not, it takes a lot of effort to get an answer from 311, right? So
whose responsibility is to fix that?
Well, I opposed creating the 311 from the very beginning, right? Because it was not an effective way to serve the community.
What would you have instead?
I would have the departmental, someone from the department figure out how to best serve constituents, right? So no one in 311 could possibly have the answer. So if you have an answer about roads, call Department of Transportation. If you have a question about Health and Human Services, you call Health and Human Services, and you make it easy with, it's got to be better.
I want to let you know that I've been calling the Department of Transportation for 7 years to have a sidewalk put.
Yeah, I've done that.
So it's not working. That's not working either. Is what I'm saying.
So where to you is the culture of yes, right? They're not serving your need there.
Well,
but there is a triage, and there is an infinite number of requests and a finite amount of money.
Correct.
So not everyone's going to get what they want or what they need.
Correct. So, but you're proposing that we give incentives to businesses to locate here rather than take that money and put it in education. I'm just taking one example of this, right?
So can I say the issue of incentives is one issue.
I agree.
That we've been talking about for 35 minutes. And we could talk about other issues. We're clearly not going to agree on this issue.
No, but I'm not looking for agreement. I'm looking for clarity. I don't have to agree with you. I don't really feel the need that you don't have to agree with me at all, right? I'm just trying to figure out what the logic of this proposal is. The reason is that and why I ask this question repeatedly is that it seems like the regulatory system is hard to fix. It seems like it's hard to fix because we don't know where the failure is. It seems that it's hard to fix because we can't pin accountability, as you pointed out, right? And so, therefore, unable to fix this, we say, let's undo this with incentives, which is fine in the short run, but in the long run, the regulatory system needs to fix. And I'm trying to get that. And it's true. This is true for housing, transportation, all the three legs of chocolate.
Can I go back to say, so talk about your sidewalk. You want to get a sidewalk fixed. Are you saying to me that you would rather fix a sidewalk than to educate people?
The reason why I wanted the sidewalk is because 25 kids walk there to school on that sidewalk. So if somebody, and that's the reason I wanted the sidewalk.
So take another example of anything, any money other than education. Would you rather put money into the environment than educating people? Would you rather put money into
have a fair point.
Educating people?
You have a fair point, but that's the choice I'm trying to understand. That's a fair point that, obviously these other things have to be invested in as well. So I am not saying that you should not give incentives, but I just want to be very clear. I am not against incentive. I'm just sort of plumbing the logic of those incentives.
I understand. It's provocative to say you would rather give incentives than to educate people, which you've said twice now. And I'm pushing back to say, we need to do both. We need to do it all. That's the complexity of a county-wide budget. We can't sacrifice one for the other. We need to figure out what is the most appropriate number for business incentives. What's the appropriate number for health and human services? What's the appropriate number for paving roads, planting trees, educating our people, right? And the idea that in reality, if you do more of one than the other, then you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? But the concept of incentives versus education is a false dichotomy, because the same could be said for libraries versus pre-K.
Fair point. But the question, I think my question is about the balance. I'm not saying that, take one out. I'm saying, where is that balance in your view?
Well, I think that from the perspective of, are we achieving what we need to achieve for all of these things, right? I don't think that we are providing, we are not keeping up with our competitors in terms of jobs. We're just not. And that's not a matter of an opinion. That's a matter of the job growth in the area. We are not getting our fair share of those jobs, and we're falling behind. So in this small sliver of what the county wants and needs, we need to figure out how to get more balance in this small sliver. Several of those, and there are several ways to do that. One way is to look at the tax structure. Another way is to fix regulatory climate. Another way is to market. And another way is to provide incentives. And that's something that we need to do.
Okay, let's talk about this relationship that you posited between jobs and transportation and housing. And obviously, we recognize that they are related to each other. How do you think that how do you think that these things are not working right now, in that stool is sort of, one broken leg or whatever it is, however, whichever metaphor you want, in Montgomery County?
Yeah, so part of it, a lot of it has to do with workforce, right? So we need the jobs, we need the workers, we need the workers to be able to afford to live in Montgomery County. We need workers to get from point A to point B. So the issue is when companies are looking to relocate here, they look at workforce, they look at cost of living, and they look at the community, the profile of the community. And so housing affordability is a major component in that. And so right now we're woefully undersupplied when it comes to housing. So I'm sure you and your listeners have been tracking the Thrive 2050 plan, the general plan, which calls for a significant number of housing. I think it's something like 60,000. We're going to be short 60,000 houses in the next 20 years or so. I support that. I support the Thrive plan. I support the concept of denser communities. I think that we need to look at how to provide, and I'm looking at housing affordability versus affordable housing. Those are two different issues. Of course, we need more affordable housing, but we need to also look at this housing affordability concept. And so the simple supply and demand. We need to increase the supply to meet the demand. And I support that. And also from the perspective of, it's not just supply, but we need to broaden our view of the types of housing. I fully support triplex, duplex, multifamily, larger multifamily units so that families can actually live in. So I think that having a wider variety of housing, smaller lots, smaller homes.
One part of Thrive 2050 is to upzone certain neighborhoods, especially around transit. But that's only one way of doing it. There is another way of doing it, which is to allow these duplexes and triplexes to come up across the whole of the county itself. Would you be in support of that kind of broader zoning change?
Absent the ag reserve, you mean?
Yes, absent ag reserve, yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the issues that, the third leg, right, is transportation. And so the issue of preferably having transit-oriented development. And so it makes more sense to have upzoning in areas that are contiguous to transit and Metro being the most efficient right now transit. Although we could have another episode on the MARC stations, the MARC train, which is woefully underutilized. So I support. I would look at that from the perspective of how do we get people from point A to point B, because you can't upzone without providing transportation. One of the issues in the Thrive plan that I support the housing initiative. I live in Germantown. We have an issue with transportation, and it's not all about transit. I mean, I can't imagine not solving transportation problems without additional road capacity. I think that we absolutely need to increase our transit capacity, but we also need to increase roads.
Where would you increase the roads?
I support the I-270 plan that the governor, the HOT lanes on I-270. I think that that's important. My primary focus is 370 north up to Frederick. That's
correct. And that's not under immediately in the plan, right?
It's in phase 2 of the plan.
The division between up county and down county is a big one. You're running to represent up county, and the jobs, transportation, housing troika that you mentioned is a particular problem in up county, and different from, I would imagine, the same problem in down county. How do you see the difference between up county and down county with respect to the three-legged stool that you're talking about?
So I think that the issue is jobs. Germantown is the largest jurisdiction in Montgomery County. We have 91,000 people, larger than Silver Spring, larger than Bethesda, Gaithersburg, Rockville. We're the largest jurisdiction. We are master planned development with a balance of residents, retail, and jobs. And the residents came, retail came, and the jobs didn't. And so it's imbalanced. And so we need jobs in Germantown and transportation. So I think that that's the issue of, if we had more jobs, we would have fewer people driving. If we had better transportation, we wouldn't have the congestion. So my focus would be on jobs.
Well, how do you get support for up county jobs as opposed to down county jobs? I mean, that's a distinction.
Well, so one of the issues there is, we're not a municipality. We don't have an urban district. There is no one whose job it is to bring jobs to Germantown. And I think that should change. And I've been advocating that for, 20 years, right? We need focus on Germantown. And so because we're not a municipality, because we don't have an urban district, we don't have a bid, we need the support of the county to say, okay, we're going to focus on Germantown.
Do you want a business improvement district?
I think it would work. Yeah, we've looked at urban district. Of course, every 5 years somebody says, let's incorporate. And it's like, okay, I'm right behind you. I'm way behind you on that one, right? But I think urban district is viable. And I think a bid would be viable.
Marilyn Balcombe, thank you for coming on I Hate Politics. I hope you'll come back.
What I miss the most are the shows. My longing for live music grows. This is my quarantine song. Everything feels wrong, but I know it will be okay. Just maybe not today. It'll be okay one day.
That was Marilyn Balcombe from Montgomery County Council District 2. You can find out more about her at marilynbalcombe.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at Marilyn Balcombe. Music for this episode comes from Kara Levchenko, an Arlington-based singer-songwriter who is the choir director at Centreville High School in Fairfax, Virginia.
Bring me little water, Sylvie. Bring me little water now. Bring me little water, Sylvie. Every little once in a while. Bring it in a bucket, Sylvie. Bring it in a bucket now. Bring it in a bucket, Sylvie.